Welcome to Salvage, a podcast for conversations with artists about the repurposed materials they use in their art practice. Please enjoy my conversation with Nathalie Kalbach. Nat is a self-taught mixed media artist, writer, and advocate for historic preservation, whose vibrant works explore urban subject matter through a fusion of paint mediums and collage materials. Her unconventional path into the art world began as a sanctuary from her former role as a paralegal, where she discovered the transformative power of art as a means of storytelling and personal expression. She says she finds inspiration in the ever-changing dynamics of city life, particularly in the urban subject matter that surrounds her. Nat connects deeply with the spaces she lives in by not only exploring visual aspects, but also by researching the history and the stories that unfold within the buildings and structures that populate the cityscape. Thank you so much for being here, Nat. Gosh, it's been so long since we talked, right?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that you invited me. And, I'm an admirer of your artwork. And actually, I would call myself a collector of your artwork
Yes,
since I
I
have
think
several
you,
of your pieces.
yes, I think you can definitely call yourself a collector. But I think the last time we spoke via Zoom anyways, because I think we've texted since then, um, you were the one interviewing me.
That's true. That's true. I think for Creative Jumpstart, I think the last time I did that, which was an online collaborative workshop with 30 other artists that I used to do for 10 years every January to jumpstart everyone's creativity. And you have been a participant for several years.
Yeah.
So I know that I usually interviewed a bigger slew of the artists for this, and that is probably the last time we saw each other in person talking on Zoom.
I think so. I think so. Um, yeah, that was such an amazing undertaking that you did, and to have done it for 10 years is really requires quite a bit of stamina.
Yes, I was, it was a lot of fun, and I do miss parts of it. I do miss the collaboration with the artist. I do miss the interaction during January, which I is my least favorite month. If there is a least favorite month of the year, that's it. So I do miss the interaction with all those wonderful students. We had sometimes 1,000 students or more. So it was really wonderful. But I do not miss any of the administrative work since I was basically by myself with the help of an assistant that I had for this, Kim. Um, that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
So don't miss that and have way more time for artwork, actually.
Yeah, I bet you do. Well, I am honored to have been asked to participate in that. It was really fun, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But so let me ask you, were you an artist as a kid?
No, I mean, like to I like to do little things like, crafting, like little I loved like shoe boxes and making little like collecting wallpaper and, carpet and made like little bedrooms or kitchen for like I wasn't really a doll, like I didn't really play with dolls in the same in this, like usual. It was more like, oh, she needs a living space,
So you
and
were building
so
environments.
yes, she needs an environment. So it's definitely interested in that. I love to draw and paint when I had a very, very good and very young art school teacher. He was actually not really yet a teacher. I think he was like starting out, but he took over our art class
Mhm.
in what would be the equivalent of our high school in Germany. And I was like, oh, like he was very nurturing. He did things like let's just like have a roll of resin paper and you all draw like paint eyes over and over and over in different colors, and it was super fun. He was really students. And then I thought, oh, art is cool. I think I like this. I might want to pursue that. And then we had a new older teacher after that, and she had us draw a little pencil case, our own pencil case. And I was like, I never sketched before, and I thought, oh, this is not too bad. It doesn't look great, but I can see the resemblance. And she
Uh-huh.
stepped behind me and she said, Nellie, I think art is not your thing. Like I don't think you
Oh,
have real talent for that. And so
that's so
uh,
awful. Oh my God.
I was like, oh, she must know. She's an art teacher. So I was like, well, I guess I don't have talent. And so I did the next logical thing and went to law school.
Oh my God. Wow. Well, that's a pivot. I'm so sorry that you had such a horrible experience with an art teacher. Oh.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that um I was definitely creative, but I wasn't really like thinking about art, as a concept or I was interested in many different things, crafting, painting, but I was mostly interested in storytelling and photography.
Mm.
My family had a a huge amount of photos, family photos, and would tell a lot of stories. And we would move a lot. So my father died when I was very young, actually a baby, so I never got to know him. But my mom was a single mom, and so we actually moved a lot in Germany. And so um, every time I was in a new environment, I would like look at the environment and buildings and would make up stories and so I wasn't an artist in a way, but I loved like storytelling and imagining like what happened in this building, or I would sit in the subway and would think about all the stories that are in this one little subway
Mhm.
wagon, like what are these people are like, what are their lives are. It was before there was a movie about this like encounter in the subway. I was the original. No, I'm kidding.
Well, but that totally makes sense because now you are restoring historic buildings. Like this is your second home that you're restoring now, right?
Mhm.
And you're on the preservation committee or something like that in the town that you.
Yeah, I was a board member of the Jersey City Landmarks Conservancy, and I have a certificate in historic preservation from NYU. And we have an 1890s Victorian house, which we are restoring, which some people think is crazy, and maybe we are.
Well, I think you have to be a certain kind of crazy. It's the crazy is in different categories.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting because for the longest time I didn't really, even though I was painting always when I started painting, which was like a little bit different of how we got to know. Like I had these kind of,
Maybe it was just a glitch.
do you
So
want me to?
I'm not sure
Sorry.
where we stopped, but if you don't mind, how how did you went to law school and then you became a paralegal, is that right?
Yeah, I was a paralegal for many years and in a 13 in one office and 7 in another.
But then
And
you became an artist. How did that happen? How did that transition happen?
yeah, that's a weird story. So I grew up in Germany. I lived in Germany till 2013, but I met my now husband in 99, and then we married in 2004. We lived in Germany, and I was thinking about something what I could do with my wedding pictures, and he was like, I don't know much about it, but there's this thing we call scrapbooking in America, and maybe you want to look into that. And so I didn't like um the the way how they used to do this, like cut off pictures is, I'm not saying this is terrible. I'm just saying for me, it was a kind of like, I made my own thing and I started like painting and sewing and doing embroidery and just trying different things with the photos and painting on photos. And they later called that mixed media scrapbooking. Before they were like very stringent and how what you could use, and were like very mad at people. There were other people like me who were a little bit more creative in their pursuit of scrapbooking. But anyway, it also started at the same time to be a thing in Europe.
Mm.
And so people were reaching out to me. I was writing about that because I thought it was so interesting that this combining something that's crafty with photos. I found the whole procedure very, very interesting.
Where were you writing about it?
I was writing about like what I discovered, like
On
how
a
I was
blog?
trying new techniques on a blog at a
Okay.
very, very old, like, 20 plus years ago, blog. And so that's how people started like discovering me. And then they were like asking if I would teach. And then this whole thing morphed into like art journaling and painting and but the very first paintings I did were like kind of were photo transfers, which I painted over in Hamburg, and they were all buildings that were changed in Hamburg, Germany. Like one was an old water tower, which was turned into a four-star hotel. The other one was a building that was demolished that was in my neighborhood. So these were the things that I would do that were not in a book with, the typical scrapbooking
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So I kept these things very separated. So one was like painting urban buildings or whatever techniques I would use in my other endeavors. I would use that on canvas too. And then the teaching arts and crafts and working with arts and crafts manufacturers and going and teach at retreats and doing online workshops.
And you were still being a paralegal at this time.
For many years, I was a paralegal. And then, right, that was the question. Sorry, you
That's
asked me
okay.
how that came about. Yes. So then I started to be invited like it started in Europe, and then I would get invited to, Australia, America, Israel. I would travel all over the world. And at some point I was like, so I had 6 weeks of vacation. I
Mm.
would use up all my vacation time to actually just travel and teach workshops. And, it was pretty fun and an amazing opportunity. But also my work was very heavy. We were an activist law office. We would do a lot of asylum cases, World War reparation cases. And so it was amazing work and I learned a lot, but it was also very stressful and sad at times. So it was a great outlet. But
Mhm.
at some point I was like, well, maybe there's an opportunity to do just teaching as an artist full time. And I decided to do this for 3 years and give it a whirl and see how that goes. And that went actually very well. There's still like this paralegal, very organized person in me. I was like, this needs to kind of work. And it did. And then my husband and I decided to move back, or for him back to the States. And yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do anything really with my paralegal or law degree here without
Oh,
like,
yeah,
and
you
then
would
I was
have to
also a little
get
bit
different,
out.
yeah, you would have
Yeah,
to get different certifications and things like that.
right. And it's a different law
Yeah.
model. And so I dive even more into it. And so I did this for many years, did a lot of like online teaching, traveling around. I did a lot of licensee designs for stencil manufacturers, rubber stamp and foam stamp manufacturers, did textures. I wrote a column for an magazine called Somerset Memories, which was called Natalie Studio. And then did the online workshop, like the one that
Yeah.
we worked on together. But I never really connected the other art, the real artwork, which sounds weird, but I never really connect. Like I always had a real, like a little bit of a problem on how to actually do that. Or maybe it was also, I don't know, a way of a cope out to, because the other one was maybe the easier path in
Mhm.
making a living as an artist than painting and pursuing that way.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. And at some point, you started using antique ledgers for your artwork?
Yeah.
See, this,
So
this is me connecting it to the reason for this podcast is because this is a podcast talking about repurposed media. And I know
right.
that you use it. So I want to tease that out of you.
Yes.
How did that come
Um,
about?
yeah. I've always been interested in antiques or old books. I love old books. But I found this old ledger, which is I think definitely an 1840s ledger. It has like writing in throughout like probably half of it's gigantic. I mean, it's huge. It's a
I
leather
think I've
bound
11
ledger.
by
It's
what?
heavy. Hmm?
How big is it?
Don't ask me in inches, but like it's big. Like
Big.
it's
Yeah.
big.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing you posting pictures of it on Instagram or something.
Probably like 17 inches tall,
Uh-huh.
and like it's a big heavy
Yeah.
book, and it's from the 1840s, and I'm not quite sure. It says Word something on the outside, so I think it is a word collection, text collection book.
Mm.
um and I thought it would be cool to really repurpose that. I thought often about how to repurpose architectural salvage for my artwork. I'm still struggling with there are several reasons why I struggle with it. Oftentimes when I see repurposed art, like salvage material, it's very removed from what actually is painted on it, or for what it's used, the subject matter
Oh,
for me then has not really a connection. And I want this to be kind of a natural, or like it has to somehow connect for me.
what kind of architectural salvage are you talking about?
Like sometimes you see people using old windows,
Oh,
or like for example, I love what Swoon does with architectural uh
oh, swoon.
salvage.
Yes.
Yeah, with like doors, and this makes all sense to me how she
Yeah.
uses it. But then you might like be like, oh, if I just paint on top of the window, does that just like, I don't want it to look cheesy. I also don't want it to be too much in your face.
Mhm.
So the ledger was a good like start to explore this idea of repurposing old material, without overwriting or erasing actually the history of it, because you're
Oh,
still seeing the layers and the writings and everything that is in the ledger.
uh-huh.
And that made sense to me in terms of why I'm interested in old building, and also connects to why I'm interested in historic preservation.
Mhm.
It's not about freezing something in time. It's about, like, how do we redefine this and how do we reuse that? It's not just a nostalgic thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, the ledger is like a really fun project for me, where I kind of like try the paint. Sometimes I paint the same building that I did on canvas after the fact, also into the ledger, as a thing of like Edward Hopper would, like, um would like he had a ledger where he would just, without writing, and he would
Oh,
just sketch in his paintings and then write what they were, how big they were, and
oh,
like
interesting.
it was like a catalog.
Uh-huh.
But so it's kind of like a catalog, but sometimes I also do it before I actually finish the painting on
Mm.
it. So it's a collection of, yeah, what I saw and what I painted too.
And do you prepare the pages of the ledger in any way?
No, I'm not that precious.
Are they sturdy enough though?
Um, I don't use too wet of a medium in there. Sometimes I spray paint a layer before, so it kind of like with acrylic paint,
Oh, so
so
it kind
it
of
kind of
seals it.
seals it
Yeah,
up. Yeah. But I do not really, I mean, I try to be precious, but I'm also like not too precious.
right, right.
Yeah.
So there's writing in the ledger, and I'm assuming
Hmm.
there's all sorts of lines and columns and stuff. So that still
Hmm.
shows through for most of your painting.
Right. Yeah. Or like in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I find that fascinating. And that's what I would like find fascinating. That's why I like texture on my canvases as well.
Mm.
And that's why I'm thinking about architectural salvage. I want this not to be plastered over. I want the patina or whatever is there to come through. Yeah.
And when so how many ledgers do you have now?
Um, I haven't filled the like the main one,
Oh, okay.
and because it's huge,
How
like
many how many pages?
I think it's like 700 pages or
Oh
more
my
there.
God.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be like a lot of the city if I would like,
Yes,
that's will take me some time. But I do have probably like 10, 12 ledgers and I use them. I use one for an art journal, I use one for pattern making.
oh,
So I collect them, I go around and I look at them. Um, some I just look at them. But yeah, people are sometimes like really astonished or will say, why would you do this to, an old ledger? But the thing is like, what else are you gonna do with it?
right. I guess it's not a precious historical artifact. It was just
It might be. I don't know. I don't think so though.
right. I think that if it was someone famous or something like that, then that would be in a museum. But this is something you just found in a vintage shop, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have become very popular with people just to use the paper, so it's really
Oh,
hard to come by them in an intact form and also affordable. It used to be much cheaper, but they have become, especially when there's a lot of writing in there, they have become very expensive actually.
oh,
So yeah, like I have several friends that are in the like kind of antiquing vintage business, and I have them look out, and then once in a while they will send me a picture and say, is that something that you would like to have? And then I say, yeah, get this right now.
nice to have friends in the right places.
Yes.
Wow. And how do you display your paintings in a ledger? Like I know you had an exhibit not too long ago, and I think, oh yeah, yes, you did have a ledger in that exhibit. How did you display it?
Well, that one is a tougher one. So, of course, that was in the Museum of History of Jersey City Museum. And so that was mainly about my other paintings. But my curator, um, she loved that ledger. And actually, the ledger was the entrance to the museum because the museum's director, I had the Jersey City Art and Studio tour during the pandemic was online. And
Mm.
I actually showed my ledger online and did a walking tour kind of like online also as
Uh-huh.
part of that, of the 8 minutes that I had to
Oh, I
show
think
the
I remember
artwork.
seeing this. You had like
Yeah.
pictures of the of buildings that you have painted in Jersey City and maps and stuff like that.
Right. So I put the paintings in the ledger onto the map of Jersey City so that people could follow where they are and actually kind of see that. And he remembered that the director and he wanted to have me for an exhibition in the museum. And so the ledger had to be in the museum, but you basically could only show 2 pages in a display case because if you would handle it with too many people, that that is a problem. Like
Yeah.
it's not possible. So that's a challenge. That's hard. I haven't solved that problem yet. I think it really is about media and um, but there's something that gets lost of the tactility and just seeing
Right.
the writing and everything in the ledger in person, of
So
course.
it's just in a glass case and you can just look at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody has to make an appointment to visit your studio and then put on
Yes.
white gloves and look through it with white gloves.
Yes. Have done some prints because people are really, really there is something that connects them to the way how the painting looks in this ledger.
Mm.
So I've done some prints and sell those.
So
Some people,
you scan the pages and then
yes. Yeah. Some people were like, do you want to sell the ledger? I mean, it's not full, it's not possible.
you're not finished yet.
And I'm not finished. I don't know if I will ever be finished on this
Right.
one. So yeah, that is a connection to repurposing materials. But I also use collage materials, so old
Yeah.
pages and pieces
You
in
did
my
magazines too,
artwork.
a lot of magazines that you painted, I remember.
In the art journal, yeah. On my canvases, I use like old letters or old writing and incorporate that into the artwork if it makes sense,
Right.
if it belongs there,
Yeah.
or if I feel it belongs there.
Right. Well, of course, because you are the artist, of course.
Right.
Huh. And so are you currently collecting any kind of salvage material for future artworks?
Yeah, I do have a couple of tin ceiling pieces.
Oh, the ceiling tiles, yeah.
Right. That
And
is a little tough though, because I tested them first for lead, and of course that's an issue.
oh
With
wow.
all salvaged material, it's an issue to really think about that.
So what do you do if you so those are tin and they have lead in them. Can you
They're
seal them
they're
with
painted. Yeah, you would have
oh
to
they're
seal
painted with
them.
lead paint. That's what it is. Oh,
Yeah. So I do love how they look in terms of the dangerous part is that the paint peels off.
yeah.
That's what looks cool because
Right.
you have these areas where the paint is peeling off, and so that shows some of the layers. I'm interested in my artwork and all of the materials or surfaces and the layers because they represent the layers of history. And then you put some my paintings are very colorful and very different from the reality when I paint my buildings, but that's the juxtaposition that I really like about that old and new was not frozen in time. And so I want to make sure that you can see the background, but I have to really still figure out how I can seal it in a way that it's not like shiny or weird, like
Or poisoning.
oh, poisoning. I know that there's often people say, well, if you just start and figure it out, then it's not about fear of starting something on the surface, more about like I have to really think about environmental issues and how to work without I just had cancer last year and I went through
Yes.
cancer. So I've been way more aware of what art materials but also old materials, like how we use that,
Right.
wearing masks. I have a studio in our home, so it's actually it's next to my office. So there are some things that you just have to think about. Same with old windows. I would love to work on old windows, but I still have to, you know, figure out how I'm gonna, deal with the lead paint and all
Yeah.
these things. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many things to consider when you're working with old salvage materials that I think, even 10, 20 years ago, most of us didn't even think about the issues that come with that. But now we do because, I work with plastic and think about the thousands of chemicals that were mixed into the plastic. So I think about it as I work with them. That's why I don't heat them. I don't want to even think of releasing those chemicals. But because I don't work with salvage materials, I don't think about the chemicals that were made, not made, decades ago, and how dangerous those chemicals could be if they're released.
Yeah, and they were oftentimes like added to it, you know. I mean, it's an interesting part of historic preservation per se, because there is an environmental part of historic preservation that many people forget, but that I find very important. So when I paint these buildings, I want people to feel the story that the building conveys, but also think about the space and what these buildings are and why do we preserve buildings? And that is a very interesting conversation in and itself, that it's not just architecturally important buildings, it's also culturally, but also I strongly believe that one of the more important um, more important arguments now for historic preservation that not many people outside of historic preservation, and probably also not all school historic preservationists, are talking about are environmental issues, that we are
Like,
demolishing old buildings and we're throwing them onto landfills. And
oh,
if you think about the environmentally greenest building is the one that already exists.
hmm,
You have done all your carbon footprint work on there. You created glass. You harvested the wood.
right.
Like
The
in
stone,
my house, for example, a lot of the woodwork is made with American chestnut, which is yeah, it's
it's endangered, right?
extinct.
Yeah,
Well, it's not existing anymore as an old growth wood anymore, because there's a blight that started around 1900, and
right,
by 1950, like we grow them, but they don't get older than a couple of years. Like
right.
it's really, really sad. And so there's this old growth wood, or we have windows that everyone's like, oh my God, how can you have old windows? But they're 130 years old. And if you use vinyl windows, you have to replace them about every 20 to 25 years. So if you think about the carbon footprint that is being used or left behind by creating these windows over and over, and then think about the cost that these window cost instead of maintaining old windows. And if you give them love and they can be there for over 100 years,
Yeah,
you actually don't really set off that environment, like that carbon footprint there. These old materials have used them. You
right.
should kind of like, where it's, I'm not talking about asbestos, of course,
No,
or
of
any of
course.
these things, but it's really about the energy that is used to manufacture something new oftentimes exceeds um what we can actually save in and on energy
Yeah,
when we restore old buildings. And I'm not saying preserve those old buildings as they are. Again, it's not about freezing that in time. It's about like how do we make it not a museum, but something that is used, especially with our housing crisis right
right.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it totally makes sense if, especially in cities, a
Hmm.
congested city like where you are in Jersey City, if there are buildings already standing, why not fix them so that they're livable instead of tearing them down? And, that goes to the landfill and making something new. Yeah, that makes sense to me, especially
So
if
for
it's
me,
livable.
that is, all connected, like using old materials, like the ledger, where you're not erasing what's there, you're actually just building on top of it.
Mhm.
Same as the buildings when I do historic preservation. I'm not about this needs to be, unless there is some history that really needs to be taught, like you
Yeah,
want to show that or something that happened there. Of course, that has its place too,
Mhm.
or like culturally. But if we're talking about reuse, adaptive reuse, how do we change them like factory into a loft or churches? There are a lot of churches that have been you don't say decommissioned. I forgot what the word is.
Decon Deconsecrated, something like
Yeah, something
no,
like that. Right. So, but we have a lot of churches that are being changed into apartment buildings or banks. I know in the Catskills, where often there's a bank that was changed into a brew pub, a craft beer brew pub, and I think it's such a great idea. And you can sit
yeah.
in the safe, like it's and I've seen other banks that are turned into restaurants, and it's just such a great way of not losing the history and the fabric of what we as a society or people are like connecting with these buildings and the history, but you're creating something new.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel about repurposing materials as well, that you're repurposing, it's already out there, the plastic is already out there, like you're
Yeah.
they made it. You're not saying make more plastic, you're
Right.
just you want to make people aware of what's out there.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. I want to make people aware with my paintings of here's a building, you're kind of connecting with it, what's the story and why does this building matter to you when you look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that opens up the discussion about why is historic preservation something that we can think about besides maybe the stories that these buildings inhabit and the historical or cultural importance. Maybe there's an environmental component to that as well.
Yeah, I never really thought about that before. I mean, I've seen some beautiful reuse of old buildings, and it makes sense. If the building is sound structurally, or the structure can be easily repaired, why not use the materials that are existing instead of making something new from scratch and probably not so good for the environment?
Mhm.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Wow. So when you are repairing the your what do you call her, the old lady? Your
Yeah.
home. Um, so I'm assuming that some of the ways, like caulking around the windows or the tiles, like some of the old ways of doing, and I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I'm assuming that there's like the old glues,
Mhm.
to be made from horses. We don't do that anymore. So I'm assuming that there are other ways, like some kind of caulk was made from something that is not really sustainable. So do you figure out new ways of, say, preserving the tiles or the windows in your home that are more sustainable than the old material, though?
Well, I mean, we were very lucky that most of our woodwork was not painted. So it was shellacked at some time, and I'm pretty sure that stuff was not healthy when they used it.
Yeah.
But we haven't redone it. We were very lucky that we hadn't. There were some parts of the upper floors where they had painted on the old oil-based paint. It was like besides that, we bought the house, but it was like I think in our region, you might know the term too, in New York and New Jersey, we call it the landlord special. It's when the landlord just like nowadays just spray paints over
Yes.
whatever,
Mhm.
doesn't sand anything. They sometimes even spray paint over the like outlets and whatever.
Yes.
So our seller did that with the upstairs
Oh,
and spray painted over all the doors that were painted with oil-based paint, which was underneath a little yellowish, so it looked not like maybe what they wanted to have a pristine white to show. But of course that then just all peeled off. So we
yeah.
had a lot of work in it to just take off the
Yeah.
paint. There are like different like solvents that you can use that are environmentally better, like citrus.
Yeah, I remember
Sometimes
doing
it,
that with my parents. My parents bought a an old Tudor style home, and most of the wood was painted over. So
mm,
I remember spending my weekends with them, removing all that paint. And we first started with the conventional paint removers, and that stunk so bad. And I'm sure it killed brain cells.
oh yeah.
And then we figured out, I think it was something citrus, something
Mm.
more natural. But of course, you had to put in more elbow grease in order to remove it.
Oh yeah, you definitely have to. But yeah, and then if you don't have lead paint, if you test it with lead paint, you can actually remove it with heat, but you should really think about that.
Yeah, because that
Or
releases
like,
maybe not lead, but it releases all sorts of other chemicals.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So you would have to wear a mask and be really like vigilant about that.
Yeah.
Um, so we did that. But again, we're lucky with our old lady. So one of the next things that we need to do are the windows. So our windows are 130 years old. They are the fully windows,
That's so
still
cool.
have their original wafy glass, which is very special.
Uh,
But not all of them work and some of them are cracked. So we have to take care of those. And that's going to be a project where we actually have to learn how to do that. A lot of our friends have done it with their own houses. So you take it out, you reglaze the windows, you just have to maybe repair or replace the chain and the sides that pull the weights up and down or replace the weights. But the most of the energy doesn't really go through the windows, it goes through the walls. So
through
if you
the
want to do
wall,
something to,
really?
if you would open your wall, you can, and that's what we did too. If we had to open like the ceiling, we would put like material for, what you call it, uh,
Insulation.
yeah, insulation
So
in there.
your building is brick, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a brick. Oh, I think I've seen this once. So it's a brick wall, and then there's sort of like these wooden slats,
Laugh,
and
yeah,
left. That's right. And then is there,
plaster,
it's what?
plaster.
Plaster. That's what it is. And then the
Which a
plastic.
lot of people don't like either, but it's actually amazing because plaster lets your building breathe. So
Oh,
the brick lives because the moisture and everything can go into the brick,
mhm.
and the plaster kind of like takes it in and then it breathes it out again.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a whole ecosystem that these old houses have actually that
Huh.
people have forgotten. And we tend to kind of like think it's better to just put drywall everywhere and
Yeah.
paint the brick over. And because when you paint brick, which is a very fashionable thing to do in the last couple of years, people paint their brick houses
Mhm.
and then they get mad that they are not allowed to do that in an historic uh, district because then someone actually looks into that and says, you shouldn't do that and you shouldn't just use normal mortar. You need to use other mortar that's like a different
Oh,
mixture.
uh-huh.
It's actually saving your house because what you will see at some time is because the brick can't release the moisture out again, it starts to crumble and your house starts to crumble.
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't know that until I, looked
Right.
more into this. Yeah,
So,
it's very interesting.
yeah, that is fascinating. So, but you said you wanted to open up some walls and add insulation. Where is there
If you
room?
have to do that anyway. Like we redid our bathroom, I'm not interested in living in we didn't even have the 1890s bathroom, but we had someone redid the bathroom in the 50s, 60s, and 80s. We called it the Frankenstein bathroom, and it was really terrible. With a window that was put in there in the 50s that was almost open. So we lived with that for 2 years. It was
Oh
very
my God.
cold in the winter. And we have a modern kitchen too. We're not living like I'm not a proponent of you're not living in a museum. Like modern
Modern
appliances.
conveniences, yeah.
Yes. So, but when we redid the bathroom, for example, they lowered the ceiling, which was oftentimes done because people wanted to save heating costs.
Oh, okay.
But then in the summer, the problem is like actually the high ceilings help you to have
Yeah,
the house cooler, but whatever.
yeah.
So when we opened that anyway, we were like, let's stuff insulation material so that the heat doesn't just go off out of the roof. So whenever we have to open a wall, we will put some insulation material where it's possible, but then replaster it.
So then what kind do you have to think about what kind of installation? Like you can't put fiberglass installation there.
Right. I wish I was that cool. I wish I was that. I wish we would have we were more, but there are some trade-offs. Like there's costs, of course, involved. There's problems sometimes, like what your contractor is willing to go, the length of,
Yeah,
what they do. We try as much as possible, but also in the amount that's possible, in the
well, of
financial structure that's possible.
course. Yeah, no, of course, that makes
So
sense.
like, we had asphalt throughout most of our backyard, and that
Asphalt. Wow.
caused a lot of flooding too into our basement. So we had a French drain put in there, but we also had like old bluestone in part of the base in the yard. So we reused the old bluestone
Hmm.
for a patio, and then we have a parking lot, which is, we're very fortunate. That's fortunate in a
You have a
city.
parking
So,
spot. Yeah.
oh yeah, we have a spot, but we use permeable pavers, for example, which are very often used in Europe, for example, on parking spots. So you might have seen them, like they have like openings so that the grass can grow through,
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but then you can park on it, but
Right,
it lets your water be absorbed into the ground.
right. So you
And
had the asphalt removed from your backyard.
mhm.
And where where does it go? Landfill, right? Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, these are the problems that were created for convenience. I don't want to have any trees. I want to have asphalt,
Right.
and now
They
we are
thought it was a
seeing,
good idea, except
yeah,
they didn't realize that there was so much flooding that could happen because there's no
where
great.
does it go? We're
Yeah,
resurfacing everything with our parking spots and stuff, and we don't think about where's the water going to go, right?
yeah,
So, um, I mean, it's very preachy, of course, and we're not angels either. As I said, we're
no.
not like 100%. I think it's always like about where are the ways where you can try to make a difference
Mm,
and think about it. And for us, it's in some ways in the house and of course in the lifestyle
yeah.
and art material. I'm very happy about hearing that some manufacturers are starting to rethink what they use as
Mhm.
paint material. I wish that was faster and better. You
Yes.
know,
Speaking about that though, you use mostly acrylic paint, right?
I do, which is a big problem.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
it's
well, yeah,
plastic.
because essentially it's liquid plastic. But I
Mhm.
actually recently discovered, and this was just a complete side project because I very rarely use paint in my work, but I do when I do use it, it is acrylic paint. Um, I discovered that there's a plant-based acrylic paint. They're still calling it acrylic paint, which is probably the wrong name to call it, but it comes in so I just bought some. I
Mhm.
haven't played with it, but it comes in a powder and a gel, and you have to mix the two. And it's supposed to be plant-based and it's supposed to act like acrylic paint. So I know nothing about it because I haven't played it with it yet. I just ordered a set. Um, is that
Let
something?
me know how it is. I would love to play with it. Liquitex, I'm mentioning full disclosure, I used to be their ambassador
Yeah.
and I've worked with Liquitex for many years. So of course I'm biased. and I
Hmm.
have a lot of their acrylic paints and use a lot of their acrylic paint still, but they just came out with a bio-based
Yeah, I saw that.
um, acrylic
Have you
paint,
tried it?
and that's on my list to actually purchase it when I, reused a lot of my
Yeah.
paints. I want to really, it sounds good. It's not 100%. I'm not
Right.
100% sure what that actually means. Like if that's just a,
I,
green
I saw a
washing
list.
or,
I think they're trying, which is very good, but I think I saw a list of the most sustainable paint, acrylic
mm,
paints, and Liquitex was on that list at like number 6 or something like that. Um, and it's just interesting. I mean, I'm so glad that there are companies that are trying to do that.
I think they have to. I mean, it's also like about where do you put your paint rest like I mean, I know that for example at Liquitex there are people that work there that I have very high regards. One of the residence artists that you know too is Jimmy Leslie, who I think is as a mentor for me. And he was talking to me about not like washing your brushes out by like you would like be under the water and you just like go like with this with the bristles of your brush, and he's like you're working the acrylic paint into your body when you do that, like don't
Well,
do that.
right. And also, you're washing it down the drain.
Exactly,
It's
yes.
going out there. Yeah, I know of artists who use, I guess, cloth or towels to ca or paper towels to
Glitter.
catch, yeah, filters and stuff to catch the
Oh, that okay.
yeah,
I know that Jimmy Leslie, he recommended, and I do that, is a little box of cat litter.
cat litter. Huh.
Like you can use, you don't have to use the bad one. You can use like whatever, walnut or, and then it binds like you pour it into the cat litter
Oh,
and then it dries out and then you can, I mean, it's still unfortunately going to the landfill, but it's not in your water system.
right.
So
Oh, it's in.
that's what I have a little box in my artist studio kitchen,
Mm.
which has like a little like flap, and then I pour it down there
Oh,
into
interesting.
the cat litter.
Uh-huh. So then so you wash the brushes in a cup and then pour it down.
Yeah, and
Oh,
the rest of the water that you used. So I mean, there's still something going into the drain, but it's less than if
yeah,
you would do the whole 9 yards of it.
right, right.
It's a lot when you're playing daily.
Yeah, yeah. But at least there's some things you can do about it these days because
Right.
it's actually being talked about as opposed to,
Mm.
it was never talked about in the past and you just let it wash down the drain. It's certainly nothing that I ever thought of back when I used to paint. So, yeah. I
Yeah,
just,
and when we talk about it, it's not a perfect solution yet, right?
right.
But if we
We're
do
we're
talk
on
about
our
it
way
and
there.
say exactly, and
Yeah.
so you go, and then you have manufacturers all of a sudden thinking, well, that might be a good idea. You know, I it's not all about like that they're conscious about it. It's
Mhm.
also about regulations and us asking to change their ways or take that in consideration. And if I have to pay like paints, as all of us artists now are very expensive, if I can um change the way how I spend my money on that when I have to, then I certainly will if I can afford it.
Yeah, and if enough of us are changing the way we're spending our money on those paints, then those paint manufacturers are going to do something about it eventually.
Exactly.
'Cause
Yeah,
money talks.
exactly. Unfortunately, it does, yes.
Wow. Well, that's fascinating. I love that we went from painting in ledgers to historic preservation of your home to tiles to wood and then back to paint. It's, the everything, it's something it's fascinating. I mean, it's nothing that I ever have anything to do with, but that's why I love being able to ask questions of people who do. Like it's very fascinating. Now, are you writing a book currently?
I do, yes. I'm writing a book about the house, the old lady, because I did some research into the history of our house and I found it very fascinating that many different people, families lived in the house. The house was not in the possession of one family. It wasn't the possession of the builder,
Mm.
but how it is often in cities, these apartment or these buildings, these townhouses were oftentimes also spec houses that they speculation houses that
Oh,
that's why you see five buildings look the same. Like if you go through a city,
yeah.
take a look and you will oftentimes see in an older city that, you know, oh, why are there five houses or six houses that look the same? It was because someone built bought these lots for speculation. They built these all the same kind of houses. Some they have some things that look a little different, but they're basically the same kind of
Because
style.
it was easier to build all the same type of house.
Exactly. And then they might either sell it
Hmm.
or in this case, for example, these were all rented out. So a lot of in the beginning, a lot of families that lived in these house in my house or in the four other houses that look kind of identical next to ours, lived on were like well-to-do upper middle class families that lived here for 1 or 2 years and then they were in the neighborhood or something in a big mansion or whatever.
Oh.
And then, but as time progresses and you know the city changes, the people change too.
Hmm.
And so I felt that that there was a lot of um it was very interesting like the history of the city and the history uh of the US could be told by the people and families that have lived in this house and their stories. And so basically the title is If These Walls Could Talk. So it's like I would say sometimes like I wish these walls could talk when I found some really crazy stories or interesting stories about people who lived here. And so the premise is that the old lady says, but what if they can? And
Yeah.
so it's the book
Oh, that's
about.
fascinating. Do you have a publisher yet?
I do not have a publisher. I'm still thinking about if I want to self-publish or go I published an art book before, Artful Adventures and Mixed Media, very different technique and technique book, art technique book. And so I'm not sure if I want to go that road again with a publisher or not. I'm
Hmm.
almost done with my first draft of the manuscript, so
Well, that's
I'm
exciting.
thinking about it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think, well, I'm sure the publishing world is changing too these days. There's so many ways. I know I self-published a little book as well. Um, yeah, I know nothing about that, but that's fascinating. So good luck.
Thank you.
I can't wait until you figure it out and then we can all read your book.
Yeah, if you want to read a little bit or follow me along, I actually have a Substack
Oh,
uh,
right.
page where I share for some of the subscribers some of the drafts of the book so that they can read it
Oh, I'll
and
definitely
they
put a link
support
to
me.
that.
Yeah, they support me. You can support me in publishing the book, but also I write free articles about my artwork and the stories behind the artwork and the historic preservation. So
Yeah,
everything that we talked
and
about, yeah.
obviously those stories are fascinating because I've read some of them and I knew I had to talk to you again. Oh, that's awesome. Do you have any more exhibitions coming up?
I don't have an exhibition right now. I was working on one, which I'm very sad that it's not going to work out right now. Um, I wanted to do an exhibition with a photographer friend, but health reasons, he has to put a stop on it.
Oh,
But
okay.
basically, we wanted to work on something where I paint the neighborhood, some neighborhood buildings, and he photographs some
Mhm.
neighborhood buildings, and then we will make an exhibition and do a walking tour. So that's going to be on ice. So I'm right now rethinking of what I should work on now. I do want to dive. I'm not thinking really of another exhibition. I want to dive a little bit more into this exploration of architectural salvage and how to include that in my artwork, as we talked about before.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to see that.
Me neither.
Thank you so much, Nat. This has been a fascinating discussion as always.
Thank you. Thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk about my artwork. And I always love talking to you.
Absolutely. I love talking to Nat. It's really, really wonderful to reconnect after a few years of not talking in depth. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I think architectural historic preservation is also part of repurposing. So it was fascinating to learn about that, as I clearly know nothing about it. So thank you, Nat, for all that information. Please do check out all the links in the show notes and follow Nat on Instagram. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Please rate and review and share this podcast with anyone that you think might enjoy it. This podcast was created, produced, and edited by me, Natalia Korover. Theme music by R.C. Gaida.